manna kerja ni kualo dulu ila nikayo kualo kami na ako na takira ni kasi nikayo tula kami kaya magandula la kaganda
How can a polar bear hunt seal when the ice gives way underfoot? How can animals survive when their world is thrown out of balance? In parts of the Arctic, the sea ice is melting. The vast frozen ocean that encircles the North Pole is greatly affected by global warming. What would happen if the ice disappeared? Can the unique wildlife of the Great North adapt to the coming changes? Will global warming open a sea route through the once impassable Canadian Arctic, simultaneously creating the threat of pollution in this still virgin territory? Lots of questions, very few answers. As a result of global warming, a passage now opens up through the ice for a few short weeks in summer, allowing us to see for ourselves what's happening at the top of the world. Biologist Jean Lemire and his team took up the challenge.
For a long time now, I wanted to see for myself the changing reality of the North. My dream took shape with Sedna, our magnificent 51-meter three-masted sailing vessel. And with the support of a group of friends as passionate about this adventure as I am. Jeff, with 60 polar expeditions to his name. Mario, a specialist in northern wildlife. Sylvain, the skipper. Sylvie, our spirited cook. And Bruno, our chief engineer. We've left everything behind us to embark on this expedition.
And what an expedition! 5 months of navigation, 10,000 miles, more than 16,000 kilometers through the maze of islands that form the Canadian Arctic. 5 months to conduct field research and bring back images that will provide indisputable evidence of the major changes underway in the Arctic. The goal was to take advantage of the melting ice to repeat exactly a century later the exploit of the great Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen and cross the legendary Northwest Passage. A carefully planned itinerary, 2 years of preparation, more than 7 tons of supplies for 15 people, enough to maintain a state of self-sufficiency for the entire voyage. On board the ship, biologists, a doctor, communications specialists, experienced sailors, all working towards the same goals. The adventure begins in July in the Magdalen Islands, a fishing archipelago at the heart of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where most crew members live. Everyone has come out to see off family and friends who are leaving on such a long voyage.
As we prepare to enter one of the most perilous waterways in the world, I am filled with doubt. In the face of an increasingly unpredictable natural world, we will only be able to depend on ourselves. But we're ready. We head north, towards the ice and cold of the unknown.
Plus le 27.
185 000. Plus le 27.
Sailing down the Gulf of St. Lawrence, after so many months of preparation, the crew savors the sea air and delights in the landscapes and wildlife. Fed by numerous rivers, the Gulf is exceptionally rich in flora and fauna. In spring, when the ice melts, the plankton blooms in an explosion of life, providing food for vast numbers of fish. Dolphins, porpoise, whales, nearly a dozen cetacean species take advantage of this abundance of life.
We have some fellow travelers, humpbacked whales. They have come here from the Caribbean to share in the feast. 2 centuries ago, these waters were at the very edge of the polar world. They were hunting grounds for walruses and bowhead whales. Today, the frontier of the Arctic has moved more than 1,000 kilometers farther north. The wildlife too has had to move north to maintain the same living conditions. Global warming has allowed species from the south to invade the north, crossing the climate barrier that no longer really exists. Driven by the urge to discover and understand, we too cross the invisible barrier.
Everyone settles into the rhythm of life on board. Suddenly, fog rolls in along the coast of Labrador, alerting the crew.
Il y a du brouillard à peu près à 3000, 2-3000, donc c'est difficile à évaluer.
Mais par contre, sur le radar, ça me semble être beaucoup plus facile en avant.
Roger.
It's an enchanting sight, but caution is needed. The crew is taken aback by the amount of ice. The ship must slow down. A lookout is posted in the bowsprit to assist in maneuvers. There was nothing to suggest that such concentrations were in store. Sedna is quickly surrounded by ice. Germain, the ship's pilot, consults the most recent ice charts. Downloaded every day by satellite, these charts indicate the ice concentration and movement according to the wind and currents.
Come have a look at the new ice chart. The situation's changed.
We have to turn back.
Yeah, I agree.
Look at all the ice.
Sedna had hoped to hug the coast, but the ice blocked that plan. The easterly winds are compacting the ice, and she has to back up as quickly as possible.
Using radar and satellite technology, we have prevailed in our first battle against the ice. The explorers of yesteryear had none of these sophisticated means of navigation. They had no room for error. But we must remain vigilant. The ice moves fast and changes with alarming speed. We'll have to revise our strategy and alter our route.
Guy and Germain scan the map and find refuge at Calm Cove, a large sheltered bay where the crew will be safe for the night. In the morning, the crew's fears have come true. Easterly winds have blown all night, and ice is filling up the bay. Jean, Jeff, and Mario set off to reconnoiter in the inflatable boat. They're looking for a passageway through the maze of ice, an opening large enough for Sedna to slip through. But it seems the wind and the Labrador Current are conspiring to trap the ship. The crew has located a narrow passage leading out to sea. There's no time to lose. A lookout is sent up the main mast, more than 30 meters above deck, and given the critical task of guiding the ship.
We've gone enough to a rocky start. If we get such a rude welcome at the edge of the Arctic, what will it be like at the heart of the Great North, where global warming has had less of an impact? It looks like we're in for a tough time.
Is there room on the left, Guy?
Germain, the ice pilot, has 30 years of experience. He maneuvers so skillfully that Sedna scarcely touches the ice. Lucky for her, for the thick drifting ice floes can be dangerous, and she doesn't have a reinforced hull like an icebreaker.
Impact 25 feet ahead.
An opening comes into view, and Sedna slips through the islands of ice. But the itinerary will have to be modified.
Mais je parlais de la sortie pour aller en mer, sur la gauche après la pointe.
The entire coast of Labrador is beset by ice that has come down from the north. To safely reach Hudson Bay, her next destination, Sedna must sail further out to sea. This puts her square in the path of icebergs drifting south from Greenland.
Il commence à avoir des icebergs là, ici, ça, ça, ça.
These freshwater sculptures that break off from the ice cap hide 4/5 of their mass under the surface. Oceanographers believe that if the Greenland ice cap begins to melt, significant amounts of fresh water will flow into the northern Atlantic. This could cause the Gulf Stream to slow down. Because this major ocean current warms up all of Europe, the continent could become colder.
For nearly a week, we've been encountering these ephemeral mountains of fresh water. Their shapes were sculpted over thousands of years, but a year or two traveling southwards is enough to make them melt and disappear.
Heading for Hudson Bay, Sedna sails closer to the coast and meets up with the pack ice again.
I think the way is clear along the edge of the pack ice on the starboard side. So what I suggest is heading there right away, and afterwards we'll turn and face south.
Roger, I'm going to turn 30 degrees to starboard.
For Arctic explorers, past and present, ice is a constant threat. But ice is at the heart of the entire polar ecosystem, and all living species depend on it. A group of birds attracts Jean's attention.
What is it?
Head towards the spot, Sylvain. Keep an eye on the polar bear, and let's have a look at what he just ate.
There's a lot of red.
It's a ringed seal.
Not very big, huh?
It's a mother polar bear, her muzzle still red with blood, followed like a shadow by a year-old cub. A strange game of hide and seek begins.
It's our first meeting with the Lord of the Arctic. On both sides, feelings of fear and fascination. The mother leads her cub away, then, curious, turns back to look at us. Are we the first humans she has seen in this isolated region? Here, along the coast, there is plenty of ice. It's a good year for polar bears, who absolutely need the pack ice to unseal.
The population of polar bears in Hudson Bay, a little farther west, is not so lucky. Here at the new frontier of the Arctic, warming has already claimed victims. The crew finds the remains of a young bear on the shore. He appears to have died of starvation after exhausting his fat reserves.
So how old do you think it is? Well, judging by size and his teeth, this color, the white color, probably about a year or two. Just a cub.
In Hudson Bay, the ice melts earlier every spring and forms later every fall. For the polar bears who depend on the ice to feed themselves, a longer summer means a longer period without food. Sometimes, the dearth of food becomes unbearable. The cubs, less resilient than the adults, are the first victims of the lack of ice. The early melting of the pack ice reduces the Hudson Bay polar bear's hunting season by as much as 4 weeks in the warmest years. As a consequence of warming, the bears have lost an average of 15% of their weight. 20 years ago, the bay was still completely covered with ice on July 1st. Since then, the ice cover has constantly diminished, to the point where it now disappears almost completely at the beginning of summer. Silently, but inexorably, the world we know so little about is changing. The Sedna team is also investigating the impact of the thinning ice cover on walruses. This year, they were unable to hitch a ride on drifting ice blocks to get to their feeding sites, as they usually do in the spring. They were obliged to find refuge on solid ground. Deprived of seals, the polar bears are on the prowl for walruses. Attacks have already been observed. But while they are adept at hunting seals, the bears have a hard time capturing such large prey. They must rely on the fat reserves built up in the spring to get through the summer. the Lord of the Arctic is condemned to wander aimlessly, awaiting the return of the ice. In Hudson Bay, the ice is thinning, and specialists fear that if the warming trend continues, one day all that will remain of this majestic symbol of the Arctic is the memory. The premature melting of the pack ice in spring alters the age-old balance of the world of ice, forcing all Arctic species to adapt. The caribou must also deal with the lack of ice as best they can. The greatest threat to northern wildlife may well come from the south. The common murre, a bird in the penguin family, lives in huge colonies on the sheer cliffs north of Hudson Bay. It, too, depends on the ice to feed. Murres feed their chicks small Arctic cod, flapping their wings and diving as deep as 50 meters in pursuit of the fish. But in recent years, the chick's diet has changed. The parents now bring capelins and sand lances back to the nest, fish species that have come from the south and are replacing the Arctic cod. The presence of species from the south, which are moving into the Arctic with increasing frequency, shows that changes are indeed underway within the Arctic's marine ecosystem. In the interaction between species, there will inevitably be winners and losers.
The first law of nature is adapt or die. Here, everyone must adapt to change, including the Inuit, as they have always had to do to survive in these conditions.
No, we're picking up anything that we can eat.
Oh yeah? Oh wow.
Wow.
So you eat that?
Yeah.
You eat starfish?
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Tell me, how do you eat that?
We'll show you.
Okay.
Try this one. I think they're the eggs.
Oh, it's the head,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah?
the head. Wow.
All right.
It's really good.
It is pretty good.
It's just like scallop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
pretty
full,
good,
huh?
eh? Oh, yeah.
Anybody else?
It's time to head north. We leave behind one of the Arctic regions most affected by global warming. In Hudson Bay, there are clear signs that global warming is real, and the expected climate change has already begun to transform this fragile, unique world.